of Alumni and Alumni is proud to honor Dr. Florence Fassanelli with its award for 2013. Good morning to you all. I want to thank those who invited me to be here. President Ryerson, Lisa, and her staff, Alumni Association President Romero, and her committee, and Laura Sanders and her alumni office staff. I'm honored to stand here before you and honored to remember the lives of 3 of my classmates whose encouragement has lasted me to this day. Jane Wilson, Eleanor Marsh-Hillers, and Christine Patton Chapman, all unfortunately no longer with us. I stand before you because of what I learned at Wells 16 years ago. When I first arrived in Aurora, I was a smart but very naive 17-year-old, raised in rural communities and knowing very little about inequalities or civil rights and the role that access to education can play in addressing injustices. The father of one of my high school classmates was the headmaster of a boys' boarding school. He told me that if I went to Wells and majored in mathematics, I would be in demand my whole life. If I could see Sam Bartlett today, I would thank him for his amazingly accurate foresight. I followed his advice and learned not only where Wells' education in mathematics would lead me, but also what a huge role that education would play for me during my career in addressing injustice. What I want to tell you is that Wells opened up my entire world. I graduated in 1954, and as it was 1954, I married right away, right after graduation. And I moved with my husband, who was a clergyman, to Fort Worth, Texas. At that time, marriage was the great escape. My husband got a job teaching at Texas Christian University. I can tell you that after a few months of being a clergyman's wife, I was bored out of my mind. So I signed up for a graduate course in mathematics at TCU, a course in projective geometry. 1 hour later, I was offered a job to teach there. It so happened that a professor who had retired from Yale the year before had joined the faculty for an interim before he went on into further retirement. He had conducted the honors exams here at Wells 10 years earlier, and he had great regard for the mathematics department. The faculty here at that time included Evelyn Carroll Rusk, and Temple Holcroft, both of whom were masterful, encouraging teachers. Rusk, herself a 1920 Wells alumna, was among the first 139 pioneering women to earn a PhD in mathematics at a time when less than 6% of such degrees in the U.S. went to women. And she took the train from Ithaca to Wells, where she was teaching to do her degree at Cornell. I have some professors here from Cornell. I'm honoring them in this regard. Although he had not met me, the Yale professor reported that with a math degree from Wells, I could certainly teach college students. 4 years later, in 1958, we moved to 30 miles east to Dallas when my husband began working at Southern Methodist University. The following year, the same thing happened. I got a surprise call from the SMU math department asking me to teach. The chair at TCU had secretly passed my credentials around. So I taught at SMU until I moved to Washington, D.C. 10 years later. In 1968, I arrived for an interview at Sidwell Friends School, a highly regarded private school in the District of Columbia. And yes, it happened again. I discovered a Wells classmate. There were 54 of us that graduated, by the way. Christine Patton Chapman, already teaching English at Sidwell, and so the job was instantly mine. For the third time in my life, I got a job before I had an interview. I majored in math at Wells College. I taught at Sidwell for 18 years and then took a year off to write history of mathematics, which is my academic field. After that year, I was considering returning to teaching when I was asked to interview to be a visiting scientist at the National Science Foundation. The man at NSF who interviewed me and who became my boss was Charlie Puglia, who had been chair of the biology department here at Wells until 1985. I swear to you, I'm not making it. As I moved around the country, I kept getting jobs because I had majored in math at Wells. But I feel that my Wells education helped me to discover more than just mathematical inequalities. While teaching at Sidwell Friends, I found out about the inequalities of life and how crucial access to a good education was. In my early years there, African American students were encouraged to enroll and become part of the student body, yet the school had no black faculty. Once I noticed this injustice, which to its credit Sidwell corrected shortly thereafter, I began to see other kinds of inequalities. I realized that as a woman teacher, I was earning half what the men earned. Sidwell eventually corrected this injustice, which society as a whole has yet to equalize. Just this spring, the American Association for University Women reported that women today earn 77 cents for every dollar a man earns for exactly the same job. Even in 2013, it's still too common for men in my professional community to receive credit for work performed by women. Sidwell Friends provided training for students before they joined protest marches. It's a Quaker school, in case you didn't know. By the 1980s, I was joining the marches myself, and not only myself. One of my daughter's favorite stories concerns the conversation we had when she was 8 years old. I was planning to join in a nonviolent arrest movement to protest apartheid in front of the South African embassy. She argued with me not to go, not to do it because my husband was away at the time. She didn't oppose civil unrest. She just wanted to make sure one parent was home at all times. Well, I didn't get arrested, and today my daughter is a lawyer. My new perspective about gender, racial, and class equality became the focal point of my work in mathematics education. During my 3 years at NSF, I made sure that these issues were recognized in the projects my division funded. I asked the directors who were proposing projects for teachers, how are they going to go get female teachers to teach science? I asked about student projects. How are the directors going to find underrepresented minorities to participate? I continued to combine standards for rigorous mathematics education when I went to the MAA. Again, my name had passed from NSF to the MAA, when a new program mandated by its membership had begun to look at relations between mathematics and minorities. And as President Manera has said, it was called SUMMA, Strengthening Underrepresented Minority Mathematics Achievement. And with federal grants, private grants too, but your taxpayers' money, we were able to fund programs encouraging mathematicians to create campus programs on their campuses so that minority kids could come there and see what campus life was like. And so they could learn that mathematics was not just what you learned in school, but it could solve all kinds of problems in exploring science, society, democracy, music, art. But it didn't stop there. In 2012, through my most recent work with the AAAS, we brought high-ability, pre-college minority students to Washington to be trained to compete in international mathematics Olympiads. One competition last fall was the Mexican Mathematics Olympiad, where 2 of our Hispanic students earned medals, 1 silver and 1 bronze. Here in his own words is the impact that this effort had on that one student. I guess planning on going to Washington to the AAAS program, once I saw the community, it kind of filled a hole in my life. I guess not meeting other Hispanics who did math. I guess that was the ultimate realization. Not only is there a math community, there's a math community for Hispanics. That filled the hole right there. The impact of these projects is clear, but I can tell you that there are not enough projects like these to fill the holes in our educational system. And since I'm now 80, I want to speak to you about what we can do for the next 20 years to fill these holes. First, we must acknowledge the truth about our broken promise. We have broken our promise of a quality education for every child. Now let's be honest, our community is even aware that it's breaking its promise and is seemingly unable to do anything about it. 1954 was the year of Brown versus Board of Education and the year of our graduation from Wells. It was a year that segregation was to have been abolished in education, but schools have become segregated. Today, the most destructive force to quality education is the economic divide. In Washington, D.C., where I live, 70% of third-grade public school children cannot read at a basic level of comprehension. A quick survey shows that these children are all in schools that provide free meals, indicating the parents are at or below the poverty level.